We live in a world of instant communication. Smartphones, video calls, messages that travel across oceans in seconds. But it wasn't always this way. There was a time when voices were confined to the room they were spoken in, when communication had limits, until one invention changed everything. An invention that gave our words wings. And behind that invention was a man obsessed with sound. A man who didn't just dream of hearing voices from afar, he made it real. So, who was Alexander Graham Bell? How did his passion for sound and speech lead to one of the greatest inventions of all time? And how did he change the way we connect forever? Welcome back to 1,000-Year Personalities. And in this episode, we explore the life, mind, and legacy of the man who gave the world the telephone, Alexander Graham Bell. Alexander Graham Bell was born on March 3, 1847 in Edinburgh, Scotland, into a family where sound was sacred. His grandfather and father were both renowned elocutionists, experts in speech. His father, Alexander Melville Bell, even developed visible speech, a system to teach speaking to the deaf. Young Alexander, or Alec as his family called him, grew up surrounded by phonetics, pronunciation, and communication. But his fascination went deeper than speech. It was hearing itself that captivated him. And there was another influence. His mother, Eliza, was nearly deaf. Bell would speak to her by pressing his lips to her forehead, letting her feel the vibrations. His empathy, curiosity, and drive to help the deaf began right there, in his own home. In his teenage years, tragedy struck. 2 of Bell's brothers died from tuberculosis. Fearing for Alec's health, the family moved to Canada in 1870, hoping the cleaner air would help. A year later, Bell moved to Boston, where he began teaching at schools for the deaf. He quickly gained a reputation, not just as a teacher, but as a visionary. He believed that deaf people could be taught to speak, and he pioneered new methods to help them. But in the background of all this work, Bell had another obsession brewing: transmitting sound through wires. The 1870s were a time of invention. The telegraph was already revolutionizing communication, allowing messages to be sent using Morse code. But Bell wanted something more. He wanted to transmit the human voice. He wasn't the only one. Elisha Gray, another inventor, was working on a similar idea. The race was on. Bell, working with his partner Thomas Watson, spent sleepless nights building prototypes, experimenting with membranes, wires, magnets, and currents. There were failures, sparks, smoked out wires. But then on March 10, 1876, everything changed. In a cramped Boston workshop, Bell uttered the words that would echo through history. "Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you." Watson in the other room heard him, clearly, through the device they had built. The telephone was born. It wasn't just a technological breakthrough, it was a miracle. The idea that your voice could travel through a wire and be heard across distances was mind-blowing. Bell rushed to patent the invention, filing it just hours before Elisha Gray. Timing, as they say, is everything. The telephone patent, filed as U.S. Patent number 174,465, would go on to become one of the most valuable patents in history. But with success came conflict. Bell faced over 600 lawsuits, including one from the U.S. government. Inventors, corporations, and even politicians challenged his claim to the invention. Bell stood firm and won. By the time he was in his 30s, he was world famous and extremely wealthy. But he didn't let the telephone define his life. For Bell, invention wasn't about money. It was about curiosity. After the telephone, Bell could have retired and lived comfortably, but he didn't. He founded the Bell Telephone. But he left the day-to-day running to others and went back to doing what he loved: inventing. He worked on devices for the deaf, including electrical speech synthesizers. The photophone, a device that transmitted sound using light, a precursor to fiber optics. Early airplanes and hydrofoils, helping push forward aviation and marine technology. Metal detectors, one of which was used to try to locate the bullet in President James Garfield after an assassination attempt. Bell's mind was a storm of ideas, always questioning, always pushing boundaries. Amid all his achievements, Bell's personal life was rich and grounded. In 1877, he married Mabel Hubbard, one of his former deaf students. Their love story was deep and enduring. Mabel became not only his partner, but also his inspiration and support. Together they had 4 children and spent much of their time in Nova Scotia, at their estate called Bain-Brae, where Bell continued his experiments, surrounded by nature. Despite his fame, Bell remained humble, thoughtful, and deeply committed to helping the deaf community throughout his life. Bell's telephone didn't just connect people, it reshaped society. Businesses boomed, families stayed closer, emergency services improved. And over time, borders between countries began to feel smaller. From the switchboard operators of the 1900s to the smartphones in our pockets today, the legacy of Bell's ideas everywhere. It's hard to imagine the modern world without the ability to call, connect, and communicate across the globe in real time. And yet, it all started with one man's passion to help others hear. On August 2nd, 1922, Alexander Graham Bell passed away at the age of 75. In a remarkable tribute, every phone in the United States and Canada was silenced for 1 full minute during his funeral. Think about that. For a man whose invention had made the world louder, clearer, and more connected, the silence was the ultimate sign of respect. Bell was buried in Nova Scotia, overlooking the waters he loved, surrounded by the land where many of his dreams had taken shape. Today, Bell is known as the inventor of the telephone, but he was so much more. He was a scientist, a teacher, a humanitarian, and a visionary. He spent his life chasing sound, not just for curiosity, but to bring people closer together. He believed in using science not to dominate, but to serve, not to isolate, but to connect. He once said, "The day will come when the man at the telephone will be able to see the distant person to whom he is speaking." That day is our everyday. From FaceTime to Zoom to WhatsApp, Bell's vision lives on in ways he could only imagine. In the long timeline of human history, a few moments shift everything. One of those moments happened when a young inventor picked up a device and said, "Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you." With those words, distance died. Alexander Graham Bell didn't just invent the telephone, he invented connection. Thank you for watching 1,000-Year Personalities. If this episode sparked something in you, give it a like, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more stories of people who reshaped our world, one idea at a time. And remember, sometimes the greatest inventions start not with answers,